Well, there were all those stories at the time. There's stories about almost everything.
Yeah, that's the
About
thing.
how you didn't get along, you had
No,
didn't
no,
like one another.
we didn't get along. We were four guys. We had rows.
Welcome back to our channel. Ringo Starr, the heartbeat of the Beatles, is not just a talented drummer, but also a symbol of simplicity and humor in a world burdened by the pressures of fame. From a frail, sickly boy growing up in Liverpool to standing on the biggest stages in the world, Ringo's journey is a testament to the power of passion and resilience. Throughout his career, he was the glue that held the band together, a reliable friend amidst conflicts and turmoil. Yet, behind the stage lights and legendary hits lay untold secrets. Now, at 84, Ringo has broken his decades-long silence to reveal a shocking detail. Yoko Ono may have played a far deeper role in the Beatles' breakup than we ever imagined. Could this be the final piece of the puzzle to unlock the mystery behind the dissolution of the most iconic band in history? Let us turn back the clock and delve into the journey of Ringo Starr, from an ordinary boy to a global music icon, and uncover what he has to say about Yoko Ono's connection to the Beatles' downfall. Early life. Richard Starkey, better known to the world as Ringo Starr, came into the world on July 7, 1940, in the working-class district of Dingle, Liverpool. Born into a family that cherished music and dancing, Ringo's early life might have seemed destined for joy, but what followed was anything but a fairy tale. His parents, Richard Starkey Sr. and Elsie Glee, had once embraced a vibrant social life filled with swing music and ballroom dancing, but all that changed when little Richie was born. The family dynamic shifted dramatically. Elsie became fiercely protective of her son, while Big Richie, as his father was known, slowly drifted away, spending more time in pubs and less with his family. Their lives unraveled quickly, leading to their separation and divorce in 1944. Ringo, left with only scattered memories of his father, endured hardship after hardship, starting with a near-death experience at the tender age of 6. What should have been a routine appendectomy turned into a nightmare, with complications causing him to develop peritonitis. His recovery stretched into a full year spent in the hospital, where he faced isolation from his family and fell behind in school. By the time he returned home, Ringo was struggling academically, feeling disconnected from his peers, and battling with his own insecurities. But just when life seemed to have dealt him another cruel blow, something unexpected happened. It was during this long hospital stay that Ringo first discovered his passion for drumming, tapping away on anything he could find. It was a small spark, but one that would eventually ignite into a lifelong obsession. The medical staff, trying to keep the children entertained, encouraged them to play music, and Ringo seized the opportunity, using makeshift drumsticks to tap out rhythms that would soon become his escape from the grim realities of his childhood. As fate would have it, a bout of tuberculosis in 1953 sent him back into long-term care, this time for 2 years. Once again, Ringo found solace in music, immersing himself in the sound of drums while other instruments held no interest for him. His journey was far from easy, but the resilience he developed during these years would become a defining trait in the man who later conquered the world with the Beatles. By the time he returned home, school was a distant memory, and Ringo had no interest in returning. Instead, he found joy in playing along to music, banging on biscuit tins with sticks, while his mother remarried and tried to rebuild their lives. His stepfather, Harry Graves, became a steady presence, introducing Ringo to the world of big band music and teaching him a lesson in kindness, a stark contrast to the world around him. Ringo's neighborhood was bleak, filled with small, crumbling homes and plagued by crime. It was a place where you kept your head down and tried to survive. But even in the midst of these tough surroundings, Ringo's passion for music only deepened. Though he struggled to hold down jobs, whether as a railway worker or a waiter, his love for rhythm never wavered. And when he finally landed an apprenticeship as a machinist, It wasn't the machines that captured his imagination, but the music scene that began to take shape around him. It was in these unassuming moments that Ringo's fate was slowly being written. From a sickly child tapping on hospital cabinets to a young man discovering skiffle music and forming friendships that would shape his future. Ringo's early life was a series of challenges that prepared him for something far greater than he could have ever imagined. Little did anyone know that this boy from the rough streets of Liverpool would one day change the world, one beat at a time. But how did these early hardships shape the man who would later rise to fame as the drummer of the Beatles? Keep watching as we uncover the twists and turns that led to Ringo's extraordinary journey to stardom. Early career. During their lunch breaks at the manufacturing plant, Ringo Starr and his friend Roy Trafford would sneak down to a small club called The Cellar to indulge in their passion for music. Trafford strummed his guitar while Ringo improvised, using anything he could find, a box, a biscuit tin, or even the back of a chair, to create rhythms. Their makeshift band soon attracted another neighbor and co-worker, guitarist Eddie Miles, and together they formed the Eddie Miles Band. Later, in a nod to a famous Liverpool landmark, the group renamed themselves Eddie Clayton and the Clayton Squares. The trio dabbled in the popular skiffle craze, playing lively tunes like Rock Island Line and Walking Cane. Ringo, always inventive, used a thimble to scrape a washboard, adding a simple but infectious beat. He also had a natural love for dancing, just like his parents, and he and Roy even took dance lessons together to sharpen their moves for nights out. But the real game changer came on Christmas Day 1957, when Ringo's stepfather, Harry Graves, gave him his first drum kit, a second-hand set consisting of a snare drum, bass drum, and a makeshift cymbal fashioned from a rubbish bin lid. It may have been rudimentary, but it was all Ringo needed to start mastering the art of drumming. His newfound skill elevated the Eddie Clayton Band's performances, earning them more gigs around Liverpool. However, as American rock and roll began to sweep across the UK, the skiffle wave was fading fast. In November 1959, Ringo made a pivotal decision. He joined Al Caldwell's Texans, a group eager to transition from skiffle to full-fledged rock and roll. The band experimented with several names, from the Raging Texans to Jetstorm and the Raging Texans, before finally settling on Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. It was around this time that Richard Starkey officially became Ringo Starr, inspired by the rings he wore and wanting a stage name with a country western flair. Ringo's solo performances, dubbed Star Time, became a signature part of the Hurricanes' shows. By early 1960, Rory Storm and the Hurricanes had climbed the ranks to become one of Liverpool's hottest bands. Their big break came in May that year when they were offered a 3-month residency at a Butlins holiday camp in Wales. Initially, Ringo was torn. Accepting the gig would mean giving up his nearly 5-year apprenticeship as a machinist. But Ringo followed his heart, and that choice would change his life forever. The residency at Butlins opened doors to bigger opportunities, including a tour performing for U.S. Air Force bases in France. Yet, despite the exciting experiences, Ringo later admitted the tour wasn't as enjoyable as he'd hoped, as tensions between the French and the British made for an uneasy atmosphere. The Hurricanes were riding high, so much so that they initially declined an offer to perform in Hamburg, Germany, in favor of their Butlins commitment. But they eventually changed their minds, leading to a fateful convergence of events. On October 1, 1960, Rory Storm and the Hurricanes joined the Beatles at Bruno Koschmider's Kaiserkeller Club in Hamburg. The Hurricanes were the headliners, while the Beatles, still relatively unknown, played as the opening act. It was during this time that Ringo first met John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison. And on October 15, 1960, Ringo sat in with the Beatles for the first time, playing drums on a recording of Summertime, alongside the band and Rory's lead singer, Lou Walters. Ringo's drumming made an impression. Not only did he occasionally perform with the Beatles during their Hamburg stint, but he also caught the eye of musician Tony Sheridan. So impressed was Sheridan by Ringo's unique style that he even tried to recruit him away from the Hurricanes to join his own band. Little did anyone know at the time, but Ringo Starr's journey with the Beatles had just begun, and the rhythm of history was about to change forever. Joining the Beatles. In January 1962, Ringo Starr made a life-changing decision to leave Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, a band that had brought him some fame but left him yearning for more. After briefly playing with Tony Sheridan in Hamburg, Ringo returned to the Hurricanes for what would be his final season at Butlins. But on August 14th, everything shifted when he received a fateful call from none other than John Lennon, inviting him to join the Beatles. Just 2 days later, the Beatles' manager, Brian Epstein, delivered the crushing news to their then drummer, Pete Best. "The boys want you out and Ringo in." Best recalled being told that producer George Martin wasn't happy with his drumming and that the band simply felt he didn't fit in. It was a harsh blow, but Ringo was ready to step into the role that would change his life forever. Ringo's first gig with the Beatles came on August 18, 1962, at a dance in Port Sunlight, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. The very next day, at the iconic Cavern Club, Pete Best's outraged fans protested furiously, chanting, "Pete forever, Ringo never," outside the venue and even at Best's house. The backlash was so intense that George Harrison was punched by an angry fan, and Epstein had to hire a bodyguard to protect Ringo. Despite this rocky start, Ringo's fate was sealed. He was now part of the Fab Four. On September 4, 1962, Ringo had his first recording session with the Beatles, but things didn't go as planned. Producer George Martin was skeptical of Ringo's ability and famously brought in session drummer Andy White for their next session on September 11th to play on their debut single, "Love Me Do." Ringo was relegated to playing the tambourine, sparking fears that his time with the Beatles would be short-lived. "I thought that was the end," Ringo admitted later. "I thought they were pulling a Pete Best on me." But Martin soon clarified that it was simply a precaution. And by November 1962, Beatles fans had fully embraced Ringo as one of their own. Some even clamored for him to sing, and his confidence within the band soared. Ringo quickly became more than just the Beatles' drummer. He was a beloved figure in his own right. His cheerful personality won over fans across the UK, and his infectious energy was on full display during their iconic performances. By 1963, Beatlemania had exploded across Britain, with the band's second single, "Please Please Me," skyrocketing up the charts. Their television appearance on Thank Your Lucky Stars was a turning point, solidifying their status as the biggest band in the country. Ringo, with his trademark charm, became a crowd favorite, and soon fans were wearing "I Love Ringo" lapel pins, while songs like "I Want to Kiss Ringo Goodbye" and "Ringo for President" flooded the airwaves. As the Beatles' popularity soared, Ringo enjoyed his share of the limelight, relishing the party lifestyle that came with fame. He fondly recalled, "I lived in nightclubs for 3 years. It was one big, non-stop party." His dancing skills, often praised, became part of his charismatic appeal. And when the Beatles crossed the Atlantic in February 1964 to perform on The Ed Sullivan Show, Ringo's star power shone brightly. With 73 million viewers tuning in, he captured the hearts of America. "I knew I went over well in the States," Ringo said later. "Seeing all the kids waving for me, it was unbelievable. We were just ordinary lads, but we'd made it." Ringo's fame continued to rise, particularly with his spotlight moments during concerts, affectionately called Star Time, when John Lennon would place a microphone in front of his drum kit, igniting cheers from the audience. His deadpan humor and natural charm made him a standout in the Beatles' first film, A Hard Day's Night. Director Richard Lester crafted scenes to highlight Ringo's expressive talents, which were praised by critics and fans alike. In fact, some of Ringo's most memorable moments were filmed while he was still recovering from a night of partying. Yet his quaintness, as Epstein put it, only endeared him further to the public. Despite the wild success, tensions and challenges arose. In 1964, as the Beatles prepared for a world tour, Ringo fell seriously ill with tonsillitis and pharyngitis, forcing him to miss 5 concerts. He feared the worst, being permanently replaced, when session drummer Jimmy Nicole temporarily took his place. Luckily, Ringo rejoined the band in Melbourne, though the pressure of Beatlemania was beginning to weigh heavily on all of them. Before a show in Montreal, Ringo even received a chilling death threat, prompting him to set his cymbals vertically for protection during the performance. Amid the chaos, the Beatles released Revolver in 1966, featuring the hit song Yellow Submarine, which gave Ringo his first taste of lead vocals on a British #1 single. But by the end of that year, the band had had enough of the relentless touring schedule. Ringo reflected, "We gave up touring at the right time. 4 years of Beatlemania were enough for anyone." He soon moved into a larger estate, Sunny Heights, and focused on his drumming for the band's landmark album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Despite its success, Ringo admitted feeling like little more than a session musician at times, as Lennon and McCartney's control over the creative process grew. As internal tensions within the band continued to simmer, Ringo briefly quit the Beatles in 1968 during the recording of the White Album. Frustrated by McCartney's controlling behavior and the passive aggressiveness between Lennon and Harrison, Ringo retreated to Sardinia, where he found solace and wrote Octopus's Garden. When he returned 2 weeks later, Harrison welcomed him back with open arms, covering his drum kit in flowers as a peace offering. Yet the cracks were already showing, and with the troubled Let It Be sessions in 1969, the Beatles' days were numbered. On August 20th, 1969, the Beatles recorded together for the last time at Abbey Road Studios. Just weeks later, Lennon privately announced his departure, and by April 10th, 1970, McCartney had made it official. The Beatles were no more. But how would Ringo Starr fare in the aftermath of the greatest band breakup in history? Stay tuned to find out how he navigated life beyond the Beatles. Ringo's successful solo career. After the Beatles' breakup, Ringo Starr stepped out from behind the drum kit to carve out an impressive solo career, proving that he was much more than just the drummer of the Beatles. Almost immediately, Starr made his mark on the charts with the infectious 1971 hit It Don't Come Easy, a song that showcased his ability to stand on his own. This success was just the beginning. He went on to achieve 2 #1 singles in the US, the heartfelt Photograph, co-written with George Harrison, and the playful You're 16, which further cemented his place as a solo artist in the spotlight. In the UK, Back Off Boogaloo climbed to #2, becoming one of his most successful solo releases in his homeland. By 1973, Starr's solo album Ringo had become a runaway success, reaching the top 10 in both the UK and the US. It was a major achievement that proved Starr was more than capable of thriving outside the shadow of the Beatles. The album boasted contributions from his former bandmates, further bridging the gap between his past and present musical journey. But Ringo's talents extended far beyond music. He became a familiar face on television, featuring in numerous documentaries and even hosting shows. One of his most beloved roles was as the narrator of the first 2 seasons of the children's series Thomas and Friends, where his warm, distinctive voice became iconic for a whole new generation of fans. He also stepped into the role of Mr. Conductor in the PBS children's show Shining Time Station, once again delighting younger audiences with his charm and humor. While his fame as a solo musician grew, Ringo remained deeply connected to his roots in live performance. In 1989, he launched Ringo Starr and his All-Star Band, bringing together a rotating lineup of accomplished musicians to tour with him across the world. His all-star band quickly became a fan favorite, known for its high-energy performances, filled with a mix of Ringo's solo hits, Beatles classics, and songs by his bandmates. The concept was simple yet brilliant. Each member of the band had their moment in the spotlight, creating a show that was both collaborative and celebratory. Beyond his commercial success, Starr's drumming style earned him widespread recognition and admiration. Unlike many drummers who focused on technical precision, Ringo prioritized feel, groove, and musicality. His playing wasn't about flashy solos. It was about serving the song, and his subtle yet creative approach influenced countless drummers to approach their craft in a more thoughtful, compositional way. Techniques like his use of the matched grip, tuning his drums lower and muffling tonal rings, all became defining aspects of modern drumming. Starr himself often pointed to his work on the Beatles' track Rain as his finest recorded drumming, a testament to his skill and sensitivity behind the kit. Ringo's contributions to music did not go unnoticed. In 1999, he was inducted into the Modern Drummer Hall of Fame, and in 2011, Rolling Stone readers ranked him as the 5th greatest drummer of all time, a high honor for someone who often downplayed his own abilities. And perhaps most significantly, Starr became one of the few artists to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice. First as a member of the Beatles in 1988, and later as a solo artist in 2015, cementing his legacy as a truly iconic figure in music history. In 2018, Starr was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II, becoming Sir Richard Starkey for his services to music, an honor that crowned decades of remarkable achievements. Despite his long career, Ringo remained humble, often saying he was just lucky to have been a part of such a historic musical journey. But his influence, charm, and talent are undeniable, and his place in music history is assured. Yet, what was life like for Ringo Starr beyond the stage and the studio? How did this legendary musician navigate the highs and lows of fame? Stay tuned as we explore the personal side of Ringo's extraordinary life. Personal life. Ringo Starr's personal life is as fascinating as his journey through fame. He first met hairdresser Maureen Cox in 1962, the very same week he joined the Beatles. Their whirlwind romance led to marriage in February 1965, with Beatles manager Brian Epstein serving as the best man, and George Harrison, along with Starr's stepfather Harry Graves, standing as witnesses. The wedding even inspired the novelty song "Treat Him Tender, Maureen" by the Chiclets, capturing the public's fascination with the couple. Together, Ringo and Maureen had 3 children: Zach, born on September 13, 1965, Jason, born on August 19, 1967, and Lee, born on November 11, 1965-1970. In 1971, Starr purchased John Lennon's estate, Tittenhurst Park in Berkshire, moving his family into the sprawling mansion. However, their marriage was fraught with challenges, and after repeated infidelities, Ringo and Maureen divorced in 1975. Tragically, Maureen passed away from leukemia in 1994 at just 48 years old. In 1980, fate brought Ringo and actress Barbara Bach together on the set of Caveman, sparking a romance that would lead to their marriage at Marylebone Town Hall on April 27, 1981. Together, they built a life that was a blend of glamour and privacy, splitting their time between their homes in Cranley, Surrey, Los Angeles, and Monte Carlo. In 1985, Ringo became the first Beatle to become a grandfather when Zach's daughter, Tatia Jane Starkey, was born. Following in his father's footsteps, Zach became a talented drummer, playing with the likes of The Who, and even joining his father on stage during all-star band tours. Ringo now boasts a growing legacy of 8 grandchildren and, in 2016, became a great-grandfather, the first in Beatles history. Despite his wealth and fame, Ringo has always maintained a grounded lifestyle. In 2011, he was listed as number 56 on the Sunday Times Rich list, with an estimated fortune of £150 million, and by 2012, he was recognized as the wealthiest drummer in the world. In 2014, Ringo put his sprawling 200-acre Surrey estate, Ridinghurst, on the market, but still kept properties in Chelsea, London, and Los Angeles. A year later, he and Bach auctioned off an incredible collection of personal items, including Starr's first Ludwig drum kit and a coveted first pressing of the White Album numbered 00000001. The auction raised over $9 million, with a portion of the proceeds benefiting the Lotus Foundation, a charity the couple founded. Ringo's views on current events have also made headlines. In 2016, he voiced support for the UK's decision to leave the European Union, calling Brexit a great idea, although he later expressed frustration over its slow progress. By 2017, he publicly urged Britain to take control and move forward with the process. In 2021, Starr's name appeared in the Pandora Papers, a global investigation that revealed the secret financial dealings of celebrities and politicians using tax havens to shield their wealth. Outside of the spotlight, Ringo leads a peaceful, health-conscious lifestyle. A vegetarian for years, he is known to avoid garlic and onions due to allergies, as confirmed by Mary McCartney. He practices daily meditation, and his life is centered around his now iconic motto, peace and love. Now, at 84, Ringo Starr is making headlines once again, this time with a bombshell confession that could change everything we thought we knew about the Beatles' breakup. What did Ringo reveal after all these years? Stay with us to find out. After decades of silence, Ringo has confessed that Yoko Ono played a far greater role in the band's disintegration than previously acknowledged. According to Ringo, Yoko's influence over John Lennon wasn't just personal. It dramatically affected the dynamic within the band. Her constant presence in the studio and involvement in Lennon's creative decisions created an environment that was increasingly tense and divisive, pushing the already strained relationships between the Beatles to a breaking point. Ringo vividly recalls the recording sessions for the White Album as a key turning point. Yoko's unwavering presence alongside Lennon caused growing frustration among Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo himself. What had once been a unified, collaborative group now found itself split, with John and Yoko on one side and the rest of the band feeling increasingly alienated. Ringo described the atmosphere as toxic, where artistic disagreements turned into personal conflicts and resentment simmered just beneath the surface. The trust and camaraderie that had fueled their creative success were crumbling, and Yoko's influence seemed to be the tipping point. Ringo's candid reflections also highlight the personal toll these tensions took on him. As the band fractured, Ringo began feeling sidelined and unappreciated, leading to a brief but significant departure from the band during the White Album sessions. He recounts how the pressure became unbearable, and his emotional exit was a clear sign of the internal turmoil gripping the Beatles. Although Lennon later convinced him to return, the cracks in the band's unity were too deep to fully repair. What's perhaps most heartbreaking about Ringo's confession is his acknowledgement of the emotional impact this period had on him. Watching the close friendships he cherished fall apart in real time, Ringo saw the Beatles, once inseparable, drift further and further apart. He speaks with a sense of sadness about how the group's once legendary chemistry was destroyed by internal strife, exacerbated by Yoko's influence over John. As each member began pursuing their own interests, the Beatles became more of a collection of individuals than the iconic band that had conquered the world. But Ringo's revelations go beyond just Yoko's role in the Beatles' downfall. He also reflects on his own struggles during this tumultuous time, particularly his battle with alcoholism, which ran parallel to the band's disintegration. His personal challenges, combined with the pressures of fame and the unraveling of the Beatles, created a storm of chaos in his life. Yet through it all, Ringo found his way to sobriety, showing remarkable resilience and strength in the face of adversity. Ringo's confession brings a new, deeply personal perspective to the story of the Beatles' breakup. Yoko Ono's role, long speculated upon, is now confirmed as a significant factor in the band's unraveling, but Ringo's account also underscores the emotional scars left behind by this turbulent period. For Ringo, this was not just the end of a band, it was the end of a brotherhood. His reflections on the final years of the Beatles are filled with both pain and nostalgia as he looks back on what was lost, both musically and personally. As Ringo reveals his side of the story, it leaves us wondering, will another member of the Beatles step forward to share their own perspective? Could Paul McCartney or even George Harrison's past interviews offer more insights into the band's internal struggles? With so many untold stories surrounding the Beatles' breakup, the full picture may still be far from complete. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into the perspectives of those closest to the band and uncover what really happened behind the scenes during those final days.